Good, thank you, Tim. And just before I start, a big thank you also to Fran and to Simon for making today possible and giving us this opportunity. The theme's around reconnection, and this does come very soon after the recent mission, which a number of people have mentioned, but also earlier in the year, the New Zealand-China Council led a mission to China, and of course we've seen lots of companies come to market. Before I introduce the panel, I just wanted to say a few words which hopefully help set the context and scene for today. Some of those have come out this morning during the other discussions, including the most recent one. But if I think back through things on the ground and what's happened in the last 6 months or 12 months or so, the first thing that comes to mind obviously is the very quick move beyond COVID. COVID's very much in the rear view mirror, if you like, in China. We went from masks to no masks overnight. The expectations around China returning to stronger economic growth. Raymond touched on it. We did see sort of early growth during this year, during Q1. We're waiting for Q2 data, but there's increasing uncertainty around that. And I think one of the think tanks recently reduced their growth forecast to about 5%, but that's still very healthy. And linking to that is consumer confidence. We've talked a little bit about that. Challenges in the real estate sector and maybe some headwinds around global demand impacting on exports. But even a slower China in terms of growth is like adding a mid-sized economy each year. That was mentioned earlier today. And that $1 trillion per year, which Raymond mentioned, I think I've got it right, is something like adding an Indonesia in terms of an economy each year. So that's significant. I think we can be very positive about that. The other things we talked about a little bit as a panel ahead of coming, and I was thinking about too, are the demographic trends. We've touched on youth, we've touched on singles just before, the 92 million singles. Probably talked a little bit less about seniors as a growing market and a demographic grouping in China. And that at the moment is about a 750 billion economy. Within a decade, the forecast will be that's at 2.1 trillion economic opportunity alone. The China wave or China tide and the ever-evolving digital environment. So with some of those themes, I hope we do pick up on them during the discussion here today with the panel. So I'll introduce the panel next. I'm not sure if the China panel, yep, was showing up on screen. So in China, we've got two panelists. We've got Jamie Zhu, who's the China General Manager for Ziwi. We've also got Claire Tan, who's the Head of Marketing for Silver Fern Farms. Beside me here in Auckland, as you can see on the screen, we've got Sally Gallagher, who's the CEO and co-founder for Apollo Foods, and David Boyle, who's the Chief Executive for Primary Collaboration New Zealand in Shanghai. And I'd like to thank them for being available. So we'll move into the discussion, and we'll start with an easy question, which is really just for each panellist to briefly introduce themselves a little bit more, their company, and then perhaps one point on what the last sort of 6 to 12 months have felt like for them, especially as we move out of COVID. So I'll start in Shanghai with Jamie, please.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Ziwi is New Zealand's largest pet food manufacturer. We're representing over 50% of pet food exports distributed to 35 countries around the world. So Ziwi was firstly founded in 2002 in Mount Maunganui in New Zealand, and is a global leading ultra-premium pet food brand that positioned to capture the strong growth in the emerging natural high meat category. We firstly entered the China market through our distributors in 2016, and now we are well known as the market leader, especially in ultra-premium segment. Last year, we started to set up China Woofy and build our local teams. So like many others, we have faced and conquered a lot of challenges during the COVID period. And most of them, I think, are related to supply chain issues. But at the same time, during epidemic, pet companionship also is rising quickly, which brings global pet industry more growth. So nowadays, with the end of the lockdown, the supply chain is gradually returning to normal, and our business is back on the track of rapid growth.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. And we'll stay in Shanghai with Claire.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Tan, Head of Marketing China from Silver Fern Farms. So Silver Fern Farms is New Zealand's leading producer and exporter of premium quality beef, lamb and venison to more than 60 countries and regions. So we entered China back in 1997 It quickly became our very important market, obviously, and it continues to be our largest international market for 4 consecutive years. Even though there are many hard times during the lockdown period and market waves with uncertainties, there are also opportunities generated in light of those challenges. So we are continuously developing our businesses in China with our strong local team in Shanghai. We can dive into the market, try to catch local needs and follow the trends to make strategy adaptations. So glad to be invited here to join you remotely from Shanghai, and I very much look forward to our following discussions. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. And beside me, Sally. Sally's visited the market several times in recent months. So, Sally.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not based in Shanghai. I think this is talking about people on the ground. I'm actually probably at the coalface, so that's possibly why I'm here. Apollo Foods, we're a new FMCG beverage business. We consider ourselves to be 5 years old, and we define that by when we made our first commercial transaction. We've recently elevated our status from a startup company to a growth company, which is pretty exciting for us. The philosophies from our beginnings was all about investing in beverages that could meet global trends. And those global trends for us have been about health and wellness and also about sustainability. We have 2 brands. We have a premium apple juice range called the Apple Press, and that's based on New Zealand's iconic apple varieties. And we also have recently established New Zealand's first New Zealand-made, New Zealand-grown oat milk, and that is a rather disruptive brand called Boring. We have a strong domestic business, but obviously we also export into a number of countries across Asia. China is our biggest export market. Before COVID, we had 2 channels we were operating up there. One was a small, we were young, we were saying let's have a crack, so we had to go into a small premium retail channel. And then at the same time, in parallel, we began selling into Walmart or Sam's Club in China. For us as a startup, that was a pretty big and pretty exciting opportunity. Through COVID, unfortunately, both businesses ground to a halt, which is quite challenging. The small retail opportunity is now no longer. However, the Sam's Club business has been re-established. So I guess the learning for us was just hang in there, and that will come to fruition. So the question for us is probably where to now, and that's part of the reason that it's very exciting to be part of this forum and also to have been on the trade delegation recently. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sally. And we'll come back to a couple of those points. Lastly, I'd introduce David, who many of the people in the room will know. So David, quick introduction on yourself and PCNZ, but I'll also ask David to go straight into some summary slides on a recent business roundtable in China sentiment survey. David.
Kia ora, Andrew. Daja ni hao, sha wu hao. Primary Collaboration New Zealand was originally the thought child of a bunch of New Zealand primary producers who went to a Tohono workshop in Stanford University in 2012. And from that meeting, PCNZ was formally operational in 2015. And those 6 original primary producers were Sealord, Sinlay, Silverfern Farms, Kono, Villamere Wines, and an Apple Coalition, which comprised Mr. Apple, Bostock, and Freshmax. Since then, it's broadened its remit to other members and other industries and gone broader than just primary products. And we've been lucky enough to host a further 9 members over the last 8 years. And it's flourished, and we've graduated, as we call it, several companies into their own standalone woofies, wholly owned foreign entities, including 2 just in the last 6 months. They include Spring Sheep Milk Company and also Canine Natural Pet Food. And earlier than that, in 2019, Silverfern Farms and Sinlay also successfully moved into their own standalone businesses in China. Very successfully, I might add, over the time that they've been doing that. Silverfern Farms chairman, to look at us perhaps a little bit more simply, has coined us as the flat. which is that in his simplification of our raison d'etre is that it's the place you leave when you leave home, but you're not quite ready to buy your own house. So we are the landing point for companies coming into China. So the reflections on the last year, Andrew, it's a delight to be here. That's the first thing. So I was talking with Fran about this, how it's lovely to be in New Zealand in the last 6 months, because last year, almost this time, we were just coming out of lockdown, which was an extremely, shall we say, pressing time on a lot of us who were there. I was in China throughout the period of those 3 years with a lot of duties, pastoral duties, if you like, looking after staff and family. So it's fantastic to be able to come back to New Zealand. And it's wonderful also in the same vein to have been able to watch the continuing growth of New Zealand exports into China, which is primarily our remit.
And David, would you like to take us into the brick slides? Yeah.
So there we are, we're on the screen. So I put my business roundtable in China hat on now. The New Zealand Business Roundtable in China, if you'd like to think of that, is something of a de facto chamber of commerce. So it was founded in 2018 with a group of like-minded New Zealand businesses, the usual culprits, one might say. So Fonterra, Zespri, Silverfern Farms, the Warehouse Group and ourselves were the foundation members of the New Zealand Business Roundtable in China. Our ambition then, and continues to be, is the support networks for New Zealand companies in China. So we have as our core pillars advocacy, support, education, and then direct business growth. And we did a survey in June of this year to find out, or to get the temperature, to gauge the temperature of how New Zealand businesses working in that nexus between New Zealand and China, how were New Zealand businesses feeling about business coming out of lockdown and out of COVID. So if I could get the help from my friends at the back, Katie, slide 2. Not quite. We surveyed, here we are, 50 New Zealand companies with 45 questions, and the 3 intentions of the survey were to gauge that business temperature. What was the business environment feeling like for those New Zealand companies trading with China? How did we feel coming out of the COVID-19? And then also, what was the temperature or the feeling around the bilateral relationship between New Zealand and China? So the companies that we surveyed, there's a rough overview of the companies responding. 46% were food and beverage companies, not surprisingly. Professional services comprised 18%. 88% of the companies who were responding from China. 40% of those companies had been in China for longer than 10 years. Slide. So, and unsurprisingly as well, given who we were surveying, 73% of those companies were exporting from New Zealand to China. So there are vital two-way trade components to the whole survey, but 2 of our bigger importers also were featured, the Warehouse Group and also Mainfreight. That's the overview of 3 quick slides there. So why is China important in our total relationship, as answered from these members? The significant data here, I think, is that that nearly 95% of New Zealand companies feel that the scale of the opportunity in China is important to their future prosperity. So growth is a major motivator for why we're trading. And the second major motivator, of course, is market profitability. Now, I don't think it's any secret to anybody in the room that some of the best prices and the best margins that can be achieved by New Zealand companies can be achieved in China. That is testimony in no small part to the quality of the products that we're selling, products and services that we're selling in China. So the ambition for New Zealand companies trading there, exporting there, and also across the relationship it's a very profitable relationship. Significantly in that group, I'll point to one other number on that chart, and that is those companies who have between 20 and 40% of their market, of their revenues garnered from the China relationship, and that is about 25% of total New Zealand companies are in that group. I don't think I'm giving away any secrets. Again, if I mention that Zespri and Fonterra, two of our biggest companies, are in that group there. What's our outlook? So of the companies surveyed, 35% of the companies surveyed have China as their top priority, and 46% have China as one of their top 3 priorities. So 81% of our companies have China in their sights as one of their top 3 trading destinations or working in that bilateral relationship. Now that's really quite significant, and it still speaks to the confidence that New Zealand business has in China. Slide. So what's the focus for our companies, and how do we think that we're going to get growth? So the number one focus for our companies was e-commerce, how they think they were going to grow. It was mentioned earlier today, one of the stats that I think might have been Dan Matheson mentioning about Zespri, that currently they were doing about 40% of their sales online, and his estimate it was going to grow to about 50%. Of course, the transformation in buying habits in China has been phenomenal in the last 3 years, because so much of Chinese consumerism was conducted or converted over to online, and that was significant. And you heard the last panel talking about the importance of social media and the rise of Xiaohongshu, for example, as well as Kuaishou, TikTok, and so on. So this change in consumer behaviour has gone online, and all New Zealand companies should have that fairly in their sights about how they want to grow. The second thing is about localisation. So this is a very important part of the changing landscape of China. We're going to dig into that in a little short while. And the third area is that expansion into second, third, and fourth tier cities. So earlier, Raymond Young, I note, was talking about the strength of our trade and the power of the first tier cities, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Beijing, and Shenzhen. But then the expansion into second, third, and fourth tier cities was a significant part of where New Zealand business looked to expand. Just the last one, Andrew, very quickly then, was what are the perceived risks? And then we'll dig into some questions. So the perceived risks were increased domestic competition, the geopolitical atmosphere, and finally the regulatory change and the regulatory environment were the 3 top risks that were viewed by the New Zealand members. I think that's probably a good enough cover.
Great. Thank you, David, and great context. I think the survey comes out formally in August the 17th, so that's probably something to look out for. Right, so back to the rest of the panel. I'd like to go to Jamie next with the first question. Jamie, could you talk to us a bit about how Ziwi's been, I guess, adjusting its product offerings to align with the evolving Chinese consumer in recent times?
Sure, yes. So in terms of, pet industry, China has a younger market with huge potential. And, the young pet owners are definitely leading the growth with more contribution to the industry. So the first thing that we will look and study the consumer profile. So it's quite interesting that it is a lot of difference versus other developed countries like US. So over 50% of the pet owners in China are post-1990s. And 70% of these young pet owners, they're living in tier 1, tier 2 cities. They prefer to raising cats rather than dogs caused by, by the busy life and the limited living area. And most of them are new pet owners, which means they have less experience raising pets. And also all of them, they have a good educational background. They are actively seeking all the pet raising knowledge and information through the social medias. And they are very much willing to pay for high quality products. So as an ultra premium brand, Ziwi always, focuses on the changing needs of these young consumer groups with their stronger willingness to pay for pets. So in China market, we intentionally put more focus on driving cat portfolio. For example, we are the first manufacturer in China market to launch high meat cat wet using New Zealand natural ingredients. And also it helps us to establish current market leadership position. And this year we speed up our cat freeze-dry boosters launched in China as primary market so that we can capture the strong consumer demand for high quality freeze-dried products. And I think for future, we plan to further enhance our collaboration with China e-commerce platform to better use their big data to help us to deepen our understanding of the consumer insights, category insights, so that we can incubate more innovations dedicated for Chinese consumers. So actually, we just signed the strategic partnership with Tmall Global last month, and we have strong confidence that it could definitely help us to maintain the competitive advantage for product innovations in the future. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. One of the things which came out through the survey, and I think we've heard today, is increasing competition in the China market, and that links to the China wave and it links to overseas competitors too. So perhaps I could go to Claire first. Claire, how have you seen that competition sort of play out for Silver Fern Farms, and what's the impact on your business?
Sure. So yes, as mentioned, we are not just competing with New Zealand businesses or other foreign businesses. We're also competing with many of China local businesses. One of the main advantage of the China local businesses is their high level of flexibility and ability to quickly respond to the market changes. So, for example, the ready-to-cook meals category grew really fast in China, especially throughout the pandemic. So according to one of the report from Deloitte, the ready-to-cook market reached 5,500 billion Chinese yuan in 2021, and that is also expected to almost double in 2026, which is about 2,200 billion New Zealand dollars. As a foreign brand, we may not possess the same level of agility, as our response system is usually more complex, and we need to go through more procedures compared to Chinese local businesses. However, by closely partnering with our customers and aligning ourselves with the market trends, we can position ourselves better in the market. For instance, this year we collaborated with our partner to launch a new ready-to-cook dish with our grass-fed venison, and that is going to be launched on Douyin channel very soon. On top of that, China local businesses have more flexible and shorter distance logistics. Since their plants are in China or close to market, as a result, they likely have shorter supply chain, which will be a very big advantage for the local businesses. In terms of innovation, I do really want to point out is that in the food and beverage industry, to most of Chinese companies, innovation isn't about making and delivering the one perfect product. It is more about continuing to find the right products and to fit the changes in the consumer needs. So the speed and frequency of bringing new products to the market are a lot faster than most foreign companies. So we are continuously trying to fulfill the need for Chinese consumers. So meanwhile, we are actively seeking opportunities to collaborate with popular restaurants and national brands in New Zealand to find more opportunities, even in cross-industry partnerships. So we are aiming to launch creative dishes and bring more excitement to consumers through unique flavors.
Okay, thanks, Claire. And that sort of China speed theme again comes through in terms of innovation and the product development cycle. Sally, how's that environment playing out for Apollo in terms of competition at the domestic end in China?
Yeah, so I guess for us, selling through the membership model with Sam's Club, the value for us working through that model is that when I say competition is limited, what products you're exposed to in that channel is pretty much at the will of the retailer. What that means is we get a good profile of our product in front of the consumers that are in that store. I think for us moving forward, and one of the key learnings from me recently is what we're going to do with our boring oat milk product. Some of these trends that Claire was talking about around changing consumer demand, because we haven't yet launched, we have the opportunity to really drill into those insights. The success of our boring launch in New Zealand has largely been understanding that consumer. We know from recent market visits that boring as a brand, as disruptive as it is in New Zealand, it has similar feel in Asia and in China. So I guess for us, it's now about going back to market and really drilling into those consumer insights. And I suppose for me, if we could just get everyone in Shanghai to drink a flat white, that would make my life a whole lot easier. Yeah.
I'll just jump to another question, thanks Sally, sorry, around consumers, and just quick answers here as time sort of pushes along. But Jamie, just I guess key target groups, you mentioned sort of the younger generation, but also the ageing population in China, and that would seem to relate to the pet industry. Just quick comments on that and what you see as the outlook, and then after Jamie will go to Claire on the same question.
Yeah. Actually, that's indeed a significant trend we spot in China market. And if you look back at a consumer, their profiles show the similar trend and pattern. So as I mentioned before, one group of our key target audience are Gen Z, aging from 18 to 24. Most of them start to raising pets right after graduation with no prior pet raising experience, and they tend to raise their cats just like their baby, a family member of strong emotional bonding. And the other group is that what we call the aging population in China. They also have a strong tendency to raise pets, especially where their kids leave the family and they start to feel lonely, that pet companionship will be very important for them. So if you zoom into these two target groups, that more than half of these current pet owners, they have very little pet raising experience. So they are very keen to seek all the information and knowledge to help them to better provide the best quality pet food for their pets. So when choosing pet food, I think nutrition and the recipe are the top two factors that they consider in their decision-making process. So with that said, that this trend indeed brought huge business opportunity for Ziwi, for New Zealand business, because with our ethically and sustainably sourced ingredients, like free-range chicken, deer, lamb, we are very confident that we can provide the best quality nutrition to their pets. So in the meantime, our R&D team is also working very hardly to bring more good stuff from the Mother Nature into our products. So as you can see, our newly launched freeze-dry boosters with some functional benefits, such as protecting hip and joints, improving the pet's overall immune status. So I think we will continue to work on it to better satisfy the emerging needs and for this market. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. And Claire, quick comments from your side on what you're seeing with those demographics.
Yes, so I think Andrew touched on the silver economy before. We have noticed that the silver economy is a growing group here. We have also identified it in our red meat industry. The families with kids are usually the ones who are more cautious on health and more cautious on high quality protein. So that's the group we are definitely targeting on, the families with kids. Even though we understand the Gen Z and is becoming one of the main groups that everyone is targeting on. However, their needs are changing so fast, and I do think that it's very difficult still for many New Zealand businesses to understand this group. So while we are focusing on the Gen Z, we shouldn't forget about the silver economy, which is what we are having in mind as well. So for us, to recap, for us, it's the families with kids that is still our prior target, and having a Gen Z in our mind to develop the products that suits their group, and also not forgetting the silver economy.
Okay, thanks, Claire. I'm going to come to David, but sort of jump to sort of channels and particularly the digital area, Dave. And I think prior to today, you commented to me around how that space is evolving, the platforms that New Zealand companies utilise. So beyond sort of Ali and JD, there's a lot more happening there and live streaming as well. But from a PCNZ perspective, could you touch on that and how the members are looking at it?
Sure. Very important when we started looking at changes that have happened in the last 3 years in particular, that we looked at the changing tastes of consumers. That's the place to start when analysing why there was so much change going on in social media. So, as was mentioned earlier today too, the rise of KOLs and the rise of this live streaming. Bruce Cameron, who's the Zespri's now star KOL, KOC I think, key opinion customer. But for our delegation going into China, it was fascinating for them to look at live streaming going on in front of their eyes as Bruce was selling 21,000 RMB worth of kiwi fruit. Companies who haven't tapped into what's going on with live streaming are going to miss a big opportunity. The KOLs are there to get people onto the platforms, to drive commerce towards the key platforms, and the new platforms, Xiaohongshu, which Lisa mentioned earlier, Kuaishou, TikTok, are doing a lot of commerce now, and they're competing fiercely against the two big elephants in the room, who are Tmall, of course, and JD. So the evolution of social media and its influence on online sales has been significant in the last 3 years, and the reasons are obvious, and that is because more people are shopping online.
And thanks, David. And just building on that, Jamie, in a nutshell, quickly, is there a particular platform that Ziwi's concentrated on in the last sort of 6 to 12 months?
Yes, actually, I think in terms of pet food category, I think we develop what we call omni-channel strategy due to the omni-channel shopping behavior. I think for Chinese consumers, they have such a diversified channel selection for obtaining knowledge related to pet raising, but also when they choosing pet products for their pets. But I think still offline pet stores are one of the most trusted information sources for them. For example, once a new pet owner, they start to raise a pet, they get a pet from the pet store, for sure he will listen to whatever, the pet store owner recommendation. So that's why we think that offline pet stores still, distribution and communication is very critical and crucial to ensure the consumer conversion as well as maintain our brand word of mouth. But of course, I think e-commerce still remain the biggest channel due to its convenience and big promotions offers for the consumers, especially for pet food. So I think from brand perspective now, we start to build a strong partnership, not only with the traditional, we call the classic e-commerce platform like Tmall and JD.com, but also the rising stars, these live streaming e-commerce like Douyin, TikTok, to make sure that we could always follow the consumer trend and win the competition. So I think in conclusion, for pet food in category, that we cannot just rely on digital or offline. We think we have to do the omni-channel strategy.
Okay, omni-channel, don't forget offline. Hey,
Yeah.
Just jumping next to the different tiers of cities we have in China, and there's been a lot of focus on the Eastern Seaboard, certainly companies going out to Tier 2. Claire, then David, which are the areas you're sort of focusing on in terms of Tier 3 and beyond? Sort of which areas in China? Is it the southwest or the west we heard about today? Or are there other areas where you've got your focus as well?
Yeah, so at this stage, Sulfan Farms is, still focusing most resources in the Tier 1 in branding, but we do have a slightly different strategy when we are going into other tiered cities. So we are more focused on product volume, market share and supply in a Tier 3 and 4 cities. So B2B businesses is very valuable for us in these cities. And in terms of focus, we have different products that with different focuses in the China cities and regions. As you all probably know, that the different eating culture is, in China, in north and south, for example, in terms of when people eat lamb or venison, is very, very different. So we are able to distribute our products in the different categories and cities with that strategy in mind.
Okay, and David, I know PCNZ's been out to a number of other regions and cities. Where have you particularly focused, or where do you think the members might be going this year?
Yes, Ambassador Wang Xiaolong gave us a nice lead into that this morning about Southwest China, which is one of the areas that we did go. We went down into Kunming and had market visits in Kunming, Dali and Lijiang. Big fruit growing area down there, and a lot of investigation going into that area by large parts of our New Zealand horticultural businesses, including Zespri and all of the apple businesses inside our diaspora. Mr. Apple and Rocket are investigating Southwest China for business down there. Claire is exactly correct too about North China having a very strong lamb eating culture. We went down to Hainan Island and did an immersion program down there with all of our brands 2 years ago, looking at opportunities there. And I think that it's very important that New Zealand companies look all around the European continent, if you like, where there's so many different areas and different tastes about possibilities. For us, Southwest China is very important in terms of expansion, and so is Shandong province.
Okay, I haven't seen any questions come up. Going to keep progressing with some questions from this side and back to Sally. If you look out over the next 12 months, what do you think the keys are for the success of your business in China, perhaps across the two areas that you've mentioned?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think, we have two quite different products which are running in quite different channels. So I think for the apple press, the focus is to continue to build a really strong relationship with our Sam's Club partner and continue to drive our apple juice through that medium. For us, it's finding the channel where we will be launching our boring oat milk, whether that's through food service channels or potentially with a bit of live streaming, David, maybe we can go online. So I guess the focus for us is going to be identifying that channel, getting those insights, and then resourcing that appropriately so that we can execute on our plans. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Sally. We do have a question come up, which I'll just take, and then I'll come back to one more question for the panel. And it's a question addressed to Ziwi and Silver Fern Farms, who the person asking notes that you both have Chinese shareholdings. Just quickly, to what extent do you feel that that has helped you develop the China market? So to you quickly, Claire, and then to Jamie, and then I'll come back to everybody with one last question.
Okay, great.
Yes, so
Sorry, Claire.
So Claire, we'll go with Claire first and then to Jamie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
okay. So for Sylvan Farms, Shanghai Mainland has a 50% share of the company, but in China we operate under Sylvan Farms. So therefore we do operate in sales or under the Sylvan Farms big umbrella. Some of the sister companies of the Shanghai Mainland subsidiaries are our customers, although they are still following our pricing and allocation sales strategy in that terms. To have a strong partner in market, we do believe that in terms of market policies and will give us a great advantage of knowing what's going to change or what is coming up. So that I'll say a very important and very big advantage for us. However, with the market in terms of sales and marketing, we do overlook not just China, but over 60 countries and regions. So we do need to, again, still balance there globally in that sense.
Okay, thanks, Claire. And Jamie, just a quick answer, and then I'll go to the rest of the panel with the final question.
Okay, great. So Fountain West is our investor of Ziwi, but actually we manage our business in New Zealand. So I think we still keep quite independent in terms of the management. But of course, I think Fountain West, they will definitely introduce a lot of resources, no matter from the crossover, some partners to us to see if we have some collaboration opportunities there. But in terms of management, we keep our independence. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Okay, and I'll go to Sally first and then David. The final question is, if you think about the next 6 to 12 months, what's one thing you want to spend a whole lot more time on in terms of growing the China market?
Can I have two things? I guess the first one is really that consumer insights piece. We've heard so much about how it's changing. We just need to understand it and understand it at not just a superficial level, but at that next level of detail. And then secondly, for us, it's resourcing in market, resourcing with local knowledge and local expertise. And then the challenge for us is to match that resourcing with our scalability at this end. So if I get out my crystal ball and I can align my scalability with my market demand, then I'll be well sorted. So, yeah.
Great, thanks, Sally. David?
Fully endorse Sally's comment there. Actually, I think really important that we get deeper and deeper into understanding consumer behaviour, and in fact really get granular with across all of our companies about changing tastes. If we get there, then we're going to continue to be successful. There's so much that China's changed in the last 1 year and in the previous 3 years that staying very intimate with the Chinese consumption tastes is really, really important to the success of our companies. That would be the major one, and the second one would be to, I desperately want to get a honey company to come and join PCNZ.
Good. I think, I'm glad you mentioned that resourcing and in-market resourcing, Sally, because that seems to be a critical component of every business model and certainly across this panel. Same question, Claire, what's one area you'd like to spend a lot more time on in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yes, so unfortunately, China's also experiencing a very slow recovery from COVID-19. I think in the next, in the very short-term strategy is to closely watching what China trend is and increasing the communications between China and our head office in New Zealand. So fortunately now we can see each other much easier than before. So I think building a very strong internal team is very important at this stage, that to always be able to face the changes outside.
Okay, great point, because that was so difficult during COVID, despite being able to use Zoom and other mechanisms. Claire, and for you, what's one area? Sorry, I'm Jamie.
I think definitely for Ziwi, the agility, the speed to bring the innovations to China market, so that we can to win the competition. Currently, we are the market leader, but we are definitely meeting the fierce challenge from no matter from the local players or from other imported countries like US countries. So I think we need to have enough agility to bring more innovations to China market so that we can win the competition. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Hey, we're going to wrap up here. We're in the sort of the last minute, so we'll try to keep on time for so that the rest of the day can flow as well. Could you just join me in thanking Jamie, Claire, Sally, and David for their contribution today? Thank you.